Paglalipsi, everybody. Uvuluotak. Good afternoon. I would like to welcome everybody to our second event as part of the Inupiaq Fine Art Series, hosted by the Inupiaq Studies Department here at Inupiaq College. Thanks for coming to support our students with your presence, whether you're here in our classroom or on Zoom. So I would like to introduce myself, Paglalipsi, Uvuluotak, Poyanagavsi, Kairosi. Inupiaq Sinira Neok, Tanik Sinira Jerica Levitt, Amit Koya Gurunga, Savaktunga Ilisarvigmi, Inupiaq Studies me, Ilisauri Runga. So I basically said, welcome everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to the Inupiaq Fine Art Series. My Inupiaq name is Neok, my English name is Jerica Levitt. Come on in. I'm from Utkarvik. I've lived here my whole life. I work here in Inupiaq Studies and I'm an instructor here. So welcome everybody. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to my coworker to introduce herself.
Stephanie. Encourage me. Lisa.
Uvuluotak. Nga Mikian Anira Mariner. Savaktunga Elisabeth me Inupiaq Studies me. I work here with Jerica Nayo and welcome everyone.
So we have some protocols before we begin eating and begin presentation. So please press mute to prevent any background noises and echoing. And if you're not talking, please keep yourself on mute. And when you are talking, please turn on your video so everybody can see you. And if you have any questions or comments, you can either use the chat feature or hold off until the end. So just some things to note. So to begin, we have some food here in the Inupiaq Studies building. So we're gonna go ahead and pray over the food. And I have this prayer that Ernest Kirniak had put together. And when they were putting together the Puiguikat book, which is a really amazing book about stories, he had this prayer, and I'll go ahead and read it in Inupiaq. And at that time when they were putting together all these different stories, he was saying, you know, this is it's such a big thing. It's such a big project that, you know, we cannot do it alone. And, you know, when today we have presentations regarding, you know, stories and traditional plants and creative writing, and a lot of the things they need to be revitalized. And so the same thing as, you know, in the 1970s, we cannot do this alone. And so I'll go ahead and read as best as I can this Angayunga by Ernest Kirniak, this prayer. So if you guys want to go ahead and stand up. Sabak, Angiman, Savari Nerftuni, Inmisun, Uvaptik Kuroinyak, Savariga Kraling Niklik Put. Kamanak Dording God, Monang Riptigun, Jesus Christ Kun, Kinyor Vigi Nel Rip Kiptigin, Tap to Money, Angayu Roni, Atanek Ami Savak Hanutun, Uvaptinun, Savari Kubluru, Hanutun, Aktiviva, Suli Sibuninga, Hanutun, Angakpak Deriva, Atanek Asi Tap to Money, Uvlurami, Inuralu Ruluta, Aulapti Yumaripti Gut, Anariptigun, Jesus Christ Kun, Apiri Yiptigin. Amen. Ariga. So for those who are here in Inupiaq Studies classroom, we have a few people here. You can go ahead and get your food. We have salmon leaves today. So we have some pizza and Mongolian beef, and so feel free to help yourself. We have some drinks, some imak, some water. So while you guys get your drinks, we'll just go ahead and get started, and your food. So as part of the Inupiaq Fine Art Series, we have separated it into 3 different events. So last week we held one on Inupiaq language, and it was all revolved around our Inupiaq language classes coming in, and our students are presenting. So today we have, like I mentioned, we have our storytelling class, Inuit storytelling, traditional plants, and also our creative writing class taught by Aluk Edwardson. So to begin, I wanted to first briefly introduce our adjunct instructor, Aluk Edwardson. So Aluk Edwardson is the daughter of Debbie and George Edwardson, and she has been teaching our creative writing class pertaining to Inupiaq identity for a number of years. And she's not here with us today, but we do have a student of hers who will be presenting. And I wanted to start off with Aluk Stackhouse presentation. So Aluk, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So good to hear Inupiaq language. I wasn't able to take an Inupiaq language class this semester, but I definitely miss it. So creative writing is something that I've always enjoyed doing, mostly poetry, but I had never thought of it from exploring my Indigenous culture. So that was one thing. Like, I wrote all these poems and they might have been about culture, but I had not put real thought process into it. So this semester, Ilasari Edwardson introduced me to Indigenous writing from the whole country, really. So she inspired us to research other Indigenous writers, storytellers, poets. So I was able to read and learn more about Indigenous writing in general, which was, it was a lot. We have a lot to talk about as a people, whether it's good or bad, and just learning about these different cultures was very, very heartwarming, and I enjoyed it a lot. So the piece I wrote is about, it only touches on a small piece. So it's almost like it's part poetry, stemming from, how I felt as my shortcomings as an Indigenous person. So even though there's much more to write about, this is just a small portion. And I had let my Ilasari know that I'm not a very good public speaker, that I was uncomfortable to read my work. I could try, but since it is such a sensitive topic, I am turning it into a video. So I had written to the Alaska Digital Archives and got permission to use some of their images that are in the archive, which was also a process I had never done before. So I learned quite a bit this semester how to navigate archives that have historical images, how to request permission to use them. Unfortunately, my video is not complete, and the video is really something I'm doing on my own time. It's not a part of the class, since the actual writing itself was what the class was about. I heard we have 5 minutes, so I better just get into it. Let me grab my poem. I think the video, I'll share it on Facebook. So if you don't have me on Facebook, you're welcome to add me. On Facebook, I'm just Marie Stackhouse, and it's just a headshot of myself. Feel free to add me if you're not. And maybe you'll get a chance to see the video when it's completed. So this one is When the Words Don't Come by Aluk Stackhouse. Kanoritpin, when the words don't come, my mind's dictionary, foggy, hazy, should be clear as the sun, not a tuk-tuk day, shadowy and gray. I feel the blood rush to my face. What should I say? The answer isn't coming. Good, and you? You should have said Nakurunga, right? Inupiaq sounds so beautiful when you speak it. Nakurunga, sounds beautiful. Too late now. I hope she asks me again someday. Nakurunga, Nakurunga. Sounds like Uraka, sounds like 1,000 ancestors from another time. But why did I forget? Was it swollen hands in boarding school or stolen words out of their mouths? Did I miss my family or the smell of the ocean on a hot summer day? Did the blood rush to their faces when Inupiaq was all they knew? Sorry. It's difficult. Did they struggle to say good and you? They did remember next time. And so now I forget. That's all. Well, that's all I have now. It's difficult speaking about such things, but I hope you like it.
Inupiaq Aluk, such a heartfelt poem, and you have a way with words. Like it reaches like the soul. And Inupiaq for sharing that.
Thank you.
So
I'm glad you like it. I think the video will be better. The video or the audio I did, it was easier because I was able to practice it many times before I did the actual recording. I'm just not like, when it comes to speaking about like really important things to me, I have trouble. Like I could talk about my job all day, no problem, in front of an entire village. But when it comes to, I'm very an empathetic person, and I get like my heart aches sometimes. So it's hard when it's something so personal, but like, I feel like I'm getting better at it, being able to continue on if I feel nervous or like I want to cry. But I think I'm getting better. And I think Eliselovic has been helping me with that. I took other speech classes in the past, and that was very helpful just to tackle it and go forward. So yeah, I think the video with the imagery is gonna like tie it all together. And this one's not done, by the way. This is my third draft. I'm not quite done with the final, so there might be some changes, but I hope you'll enjoy it when the video comes out.
I can't wait to see the video. Aluk. Inupiaq again. Umatimnin from my heart.
Kuyanak.
Ariga. So moving along with our other presentations, the next class we'll start with is our traditional knowledge and use of Arctic plants. And in this class, it's taught both by Katie Cullen Roseberry and myself, and I'll have her introduce herself in a second. So we both really just want to revitalize the traditional knowledge of traditional plants. And when we offer this course, that's like, one of our goals in mind. So really exciting to see that our students are learning about these things, and really, really exciting to see the revitalization of it in action. So Katie will come over here and sit on my seat. Okay, thank you. Ufluluorta. Hi, everybody. I just want to say that I'm so proud of this class. I'm so proud of everything that they've been learning and learning how to do, create, and just the knowledge that they're taking in and being meaningful about meaningful and intentional about the knowledge that they're learning and how they can use it in the future and share it with other people. And I'm just so grateful that we're able to offer this class. And even though Nayok and I are still learning ourselves, it's a really humbling process to be able to teach this class and continue learning alongside our students. And so what we have for you guys today is a series of different presentations of the projects they've been working on throughout this semester. And so they've been learning how to work with berries and flowers to make like jam and jelly. They've been learning about different aspects about how to use plants in different ways, ethical wildcrafting. They've had their own little personal student presentations that they've shared with their class to educate each other. And then they've been experimenting with making savigorok, salve, and tea. So we'll go ahead and get into that. I'm going to hand it back over to Nayop. So we're going to start off with the introductions, have our students introduce themselves. So we have one student here in the classroom. So just your name, where you're from is fine. So I'll have Panichap introduce herself and she'll sit right here.
Hi, my name is Panichap. I'm from Europe.
We'll go to Shane.
Hi, my name's Shane Miller. I live in Houston, Texas, but I'm currently actually in the South Florida Keys. So about as far from Inupiaq as I could be and still be in the United States.
Inupiaq Shane. We have Douglas.
It's just two or three of ours sometimes.
My name is Douglas Cabin Boy. I'm from Nooksit, Alaska, and I am almost done with my freshman year at Ilisago Beach.
Don't turn out. Here's Carlo.
My name is Carlo, and I am taking storytelling, and I love it.
My name is Payuk Nam from AKP. This is really good class.
Inupiaq. Cherish. Or wait, hold on. Okay. And then we also have Beverly, who is not here today, Beverly Eleazan. And we also have Elizabeth. Is Elizabeth on? Elizabeth Bordeaux, Cherish Ingebretson, and Thomas Fields. Thomas, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Would you like to introduce yourself, please? Your name, where you're from?
Sure. Well, my name is Thomas Fields, and I am from Fort Yukon in Alaska.
Inupiaq Thomas. And hi, Cherish. We're just going down the list of introductions. Can you please introduce yourself, your name, where you're from?
Of course. Uvla Lotak, Uvanga Neruk, Inupiaq Siniga Neruk, Tinik Siniga Cherish.
Um, I'm spacing how to say. I am from Nome. I'm from King Island. Ukivogimiaguruma. There we go. I grew up in Anchorage, and yeah.
Inupiaq Cherish, Inupiaq Neruk. So we'll begin with presentations. And so what we'll be doing is just opening up their presentations and then sharing our screen. Sorry. Navigating with different screens.
So I'm going to be using my another word for it is wormwood or wild sage. But I learned in my class, you can harvest it 2 times during the year. In the midsummer, you can harvest it when the leaves are green, which is here. And when you harvest it when they're green, you want to use those externally. And then the fall time after it's dry on the plant, you can harvest it. And that is used internally for like teas or whatnot. So in order to make my salve, I'm going to need first to create a carrier oil. I'm choosing to use extra virgin coconut oil with my carrier oil. My dried green herbs and gargle them. So basically, I'm just breaking them apart so that they can release their oils and smell. Sage. I said another name for it is wild sage. And definitely not sage. So at this point, you would want to add any essential oil or vitamin E or jojoba oil to your salad. This would be the point to add it to
That's good now.
essential oil. So I don't have any oils that I'm adding. Then it is ready. See how beautiful the green is. I'll pour it into my containers. And there you have it, my sargassum or wormwood or wild sage salve. It's good for arthritis, eczema, rash, cuts, and infections. Cleanup, I hope you enjoyed my demonstration of making salve.
Aviva. So that's our first student presentation, Beverly. Our next one will be Douglas, and I'll go ahead and share my screen, Douglas. Can you see it, Douglas?
Yeah.
Okay, when you're ready.
This one is just a short presentation on fireweed jelly. You can go to the next slide. This picture is just of some fireweed I found on the internet. Next slide. So first, we got the pot ready. We added some water and also the fireweed, and we boiled it for, I'd say, like 15 minutes maybe. Next slide. Oh, it was 5 minutes actually. Then we stirred it up, boiled it, let it sit for a bit, let it get its potency. Next slide. Here we are like straining the liquid from the fireweed so we can prepare it. Slide. And then here we are preparing it as well, just another random picture. Next slide. Just another picture. Sorry, I have a lot of pictures in here with no context at all. Next slide. Here's our finished product. We had a lot more jars, but we just took a picture with these ones. We had about like maybe almost 10 jars full. And they were really good. Next slide. This is us taste testing it with kakalak, with crackers. Next slide. Here is a recipe we could have used, but Payuk and I decided to coin flip for it, and his recipe actually won. So it probably would have been less watery if mine won. I'm kidding. Next slide. Oh, there's them. Overall, we had a lot of fun. I definitely would do it again if I had the chance. And right here, I believe we didn't add enough fireweed for Payuk's recipe. I didn't put a questions or comment slide. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Yeah, it was delicious.
We'll probably save any questions or comments until later, unless people use the chat feature.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, guys.
We have people in the classroom clapping for Inupiaq. Next, we have Inupiaq who will present. It doesn't have to be the whole one. Okay. How do we?
Here I did the poisonous plants of cathartic, and I don't know how to say the top one.
Oh,
The book I use is a Plants That I Eat book. And it says the water hemlock, the poison hemlock. They grow in wet places besides streams, lakes, and marshes. The plant has a strong smell of violet and grows in central Alaska to California. The flowers are white and tiny. The stem is a reddish color. On the rays of the plant, which is about 3 inches long, there are many little flowers that form them. Leaves are long and narrow. The stem is about 2 to 7 feet high. The whole plant is poisonous, but the roots are the most deadliest. The newly opened leaves are the most poisonous in the others. The symptoms of the plant, if you read it, is stomach pain, nausea, vomiting, weak, and rapid pulse. Even though you could vomit it out or have something to make your bowels empty, but one of the symptoms is stench. This is the death camels, the part of the lily family. How to recognize the plant? Death camel can be mistaken as wild chives, but there is still a lot of differences. The plant has a bulb and has no smell. The leaf is firm. The bulb, stem, leaves. The whole plant is poisonous. Leaves can be up to 4 to 12 inches long. Flowers are greenish cream to yellow color. Seeds are brown capsules. What can happen if you eat the plant? The symptoms are starvation, nausea, vomiting, lower temperature, weakness, difficulty breathing, and coma. And I'll stop there.
Inupiaq Fine. Next, we have a video by Payuk. Share my screen.
Hi.
I lost my mouse.
Hi, I'm Latisa. Welcome to my video stab making masterclass. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and start it off. We'll just hopefully you can see all this right. Yeah, so the first thing we did, this is just a picture of the stab making process. My name is Peyton. Anyway, me and Doug made the salve together, and we're going to do different presentations. Actually, it took a lot longer than I thought it would have. So here's the girl leaves that we used, and we had to do we had to make an infused oil. So this is our initial double boiler. You know, that didn't work, so we had to make another double. This one worked like magic. That was a weird idea. So we had to make our infused oil, and so the only oil that we had available was vegetable oil, so that's what we used. And we also used a little essential oil of lemon that we put in there with a quarter cup of dried city girl, a cup of. So we used a double boiler, and we garbled herbs by hand and placed them in the pot, as you can see. And we heated them slowly for 60 minutes. And then we let it cool. So we let it cool, and then we strained it through a cheesecloth. And that's when we added the essential oil of lemon. So now we're ready to make our salve. And so it says use 1 tablespoon of beeswax. But I think actually I didn't even measure it. I just put the whole thing in there, unless that thing is 1 tablespoon. So we melted the beeswax on top of the double boiler, and we added the oil, and we stirred it. yeah, and then that's basically it. We waited till it cooled, and then we added it into our little jars. And once it fully cooled, then we put the covers on there. See, we had a real fun time. And that is our city girl Sam, and it's really cool, and I'm really happy with the process.
Inupiaq Fine. Next, we have Blueberry Jam by Shane. And let
And
me,
I was going to
Oh.
say, I think you have it, but if not, it's the same presentation. I can share mine though, if need be.
okay, I have it open over here.
Okay, yeah, it's the same presentation. So, so I'm going to talk a little bit about making blueberry jam, which was actually one of the fortunate projects for me because living in Houston, I can't necessarily go scavenge and pick things myself, but I can easily take a trip to the local grocery store. And I had never made jam before. So kind of a fun new experience for me. So next slide. The first thing obviously was making sure the jars were sanitary so that nothing would grow or be weird or unsanitary or unhealthy with the project. So next slide. I also did to be the fancy cooking term, a mise en place, but just got all my supplies together there. You can see the blueberries, a juicer for lemon juice. That's a potato masher, I think, in that blue bowl to smash the blueberries around and get everything ready. Next slide. So like I just said, smashing the berries. Next slide. And then to the berries added lemon juice and lemon zest or the lemon rind, and then added the pectin, about a half a box there in the right picture, and mix that all together. Next slide. Putting that into a pot and bringing it to a full rolling boil so that it could cook down and wouldn't be as watery or as juicy, I guess. Next slide. Adding the sugar to that cooked lemon juice pectin blueberry mixture to sweeten it and thicken it, and then bringing it to a boil another time. Next slide. After that had all cooked down and the jars had been pulled out of the boiling water and set around, I filled each of the jars there. I think it made 3 small jars worth. So you can see them kind of sitting out there. Next slide. And then I processed those. I used the hot water bath process method on them. So I took the sealed jars filled with jam and put them back into the boiling water so that they could seal correctly. Next slide. But I also cooled them upside down. So I kind of double processed them in a way just to make sure they were good to go. So they sat out like that until they were cooled enough to put in the refrigerator to store and enjoy. And next slide. And I think that's it. Yeah. So I stored them. They're still sitting in my refrigerator right now, being enjoyed as when I'm home back in Houston on a little bit of everything. I didn't give any away yet. I tried to convince my friends that they needed some, but no one has been over. They've all been out of town too. Everybody's in a weird travel mode right now. So I need to unload some of it on them basically. So thanks.
Thanks, Shane. Next, we have Cherish. And let me share my screen again. All right, Cherish.
Okay. So, is this is the one that's, yeah, this is the one that's PowerPoint, right? Or is this the one that's video?
I think this is the PDF.
Okay, you want to click to the next one? Oh no, this is the video. Let's see if it's gonna work. If it doesn't work, I can share my screen and share the video.
Yeah, maybe share your screen because this is a PDF version.
Okay. Ugh, how buggy. I'm so sorry. Okay. I'm gonna go to it really quick because I'm on my phone today rather than on. Okay. Okay. So, and share my screen. Oh, here we go. Share content screen and microphone. Start. Okay, and is it working?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so I just made a really quick little video about making the tea, and I can explain it now that we got to watch it because I guess my sound wasn't working. Basically, I just brought all of the little leaves to boil in the pan and let it sit there and like absorb into it until you saw that the color had changed. And the darker the color, the stronger the tea. So I let mine sit for a little bit longer, and then I only drank 1 cup, and I saved the rest for the next day, and I had it iced, and it was really good with honey. But yep, that one was so yummy. It tasted like fall time. And then we can go on. Was that the only one, or are we gonna do both? Okay.
That was the only one.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I loved making that tender tea. It was so good.
Inupiaq near. Awesome. So those are all the presentations that we have for the plants class. So Inupiaq to our students for wonderful presentations. Now we're going to move forward into the Inuit storytelling class, and I'll have my students present. But first, I'll have them introduce themselves. And I had them practice their Inupiaq introduction. So we'll start off with Stephanie, and make sure to put your cameras on so everybody can see you. Is Stephanie here? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mga Stephanie, Anchorage Miurunga, Ili Saktunga, Ili Sakabigami. And I am going to be reading a story about camping. When I was younger, I lived in Wainwright, Alaska. My family and I would always go camping up the river for nearly a month at a time, from the end of winter to spring. One year in the springtime, we stayed out longer than we usually do. Everything was still frozen. There was about 7 of us. Suddenly, we woke up hearing the sound of thunder and didn't know what it was. The guys went outside to check it out, check what the noise was. Frantically, they came back yelling at us to leave now. They were rushing us to the snow machines. We ended up leaving all of our gear. We grabbed our warm jackets and jumped on the snow machines and sled. When we got down to the river, we saw that it was cracking. Huge ice sheets were coming up, causing a loud thundering noise. There was a snow cloud forming where it was cracking, and you could not see through it. We were racing back to town as fast as we could. As we were going down the frozen river, other snow machines and families were meeting up with us. There was a group of about 12 snow machines riding as fast as we could into town. I've never seen so many people at once while camping out there before. There were areas that had thin ice and was melting. The sound behind us was like thunder coming down, but it was the ice breaking up. I remember being so scared, like we were going to fall into the river, but we just kept going as fast as we could, racing against the ice breaking behind us. There were a couple of times that we had to go up on land and then reconnect to the river in a different area. We even had to water skip through certain areas. I was riding in the sled most of the time, and at one point the sled was too heavy to cross an area, so they had to move me to another machine. I was so scared. For about 30 minutes straight, we were racing away from the ice breaking behind us. We knew that if we stopped, we would be stuck out there until someone could come rescue us with a helicopter. Finally, we hit a point where the ice calmed down and we were able to ride back to town without feeling like we were about to fall in. I remember looking at everyone's face while I was in the sled. Everyone had this look of fear, which is not something you see very often, especially for people who are used to going out hunting on a regular basis. When we started getting closer to town is when I finally relaxed and knew that everything was going to be okay. That was the last time I followed along on a winter camping trip when spring was near. Thank you.
Enough with Stephanie. Next we'll go to Kimberly and Tracy.
Hi, Ubanga Tracy Kayan Burns, Kaktovig Migurunga. Hi, Ubanga Kimberly Abu Burns, Kaktovig Migurunga.
Inupiaq ladies, I'll share your video from my end.
We said that our first ancestors among the Inupiaq lived in a world without daylight, a world of darkness. The chief of these people had two lights, a big bright one and a not so bright one. The people would follow the one who had the light, using the light to do chores, go hunting, or gather firewood. The chief never lent out these two lights, and his wife and daughter were not to take them. Once the daughter went to fetch water, taking with her the dimmer light. Other women followed and waited as the daughter filled her wooden bucket. Among these women was Raven, the trickster. He watched as the daughter filled her bucket and transformed himself into a down feather. For he had decided to try and make daylight. As the daughter finished collecting water, she decided to drink from it. When she filled her dipper, she saw the piece of down floating in the water. Blowing at the feather, she tipped over the ladle until it was empty. When she would fill her dipper, it would already have down in it, so she drank down the water, the feather along with it. As soon as she had him in her mouth, the raven entered her womb. The woman then became pregnant with the fatherless child, and thereafter the child was born, a son. Her father, the owner of Daylight, became very fond of his grandchild, often holding him in his lap. The child grew up and soon began to cry, wanting to play with the daylight. His grandfather let him play with the dimmer light, and when he was finished, he would return the light to his grandfather. As the boy got older, he cried to play outside, and at first his grandfather refused, but soon gave the light to him since he was so fond of him. Once the boy had the light outside, he tried to burst it. Each push sent flashes of light shooting from it. Finally, with one last attempt, the boy managed to break it. Daylight then hung the whole way. Then the owner of the light spoke. There will always be daylight, and there will always be night, too.
Ariga, Quinakpak, Tracy and Kimberly. Great job with your video. Next, we'll have Susan.
Hi. Uvana Susan Metlakatla Miurana. I can share my PowerPoint on my side, or do you have it? Can you share it?
You can share it from your end if you'd like.
Okay. Let's see. Share screen. All right, so I did an interview of David Boxley. He's of Luxkee clan here in Metlakatla. And I talked to David about Metlakatla's first potlatch that was in 1982. So here is a picture of David. He is the leader of the Githoan dance group that represents the Tsimshian and Haida tribes. He currently lives down in Seattle, and a lot of their performances are based around the Seattle, Washington area and abroad. There's a picture up here of him carving a totem pole in front of his grandparents' house where he grew up. And then on the bottom right side, there's also a picture of the very first potlatch and some of the gifts that he had given out at that time. So I'll give a summary of what we talked about. David Boxley was raised by his grandparents, Dora and Albert Bolton, here in Metlakatla. A lot of his childhood, he has very fond memories of his grandmother speaking in our language, Shamalgik, to him. And he also remembers that the language was not really spoken out in public. It was more or less behind closed doors. And he shared that from his mom's generation, their experiences in Ketchikan Wrangell and down south, they learned not to be too obviously Native, which was really sad to hear. But I hear a lot of elders speak of that here in Metlakatla. So David was challenged with organizing the very first potlatch here in Metlakatla in 1982. A lot of our people hadn't been connected to our culture, so they didn't volunteer themselves right away to be a part of the potlatch. So he had a lot of challenges getting people involved and really explaining overall what he was trying to accomplish. And the only thing David had really known about the potlatches at the time was what he had read in books. That was the only information he had gotten. So at the time of him putting on the very first potlatch, he did note to me that back in 1982, there really wasn't any artwork in the schools, and very little people had artwork in their homes. It was still kind of really hidden. But with the help of his grandfather, Albert, David was able to go and forage a 23-foot totem pole out in the woods. And he ultimately carved that totem pole primarily in our cold storage area, but as it started to progress, he moved it to his grandparents' lawn where he finished it. At the time of the potlatch, David didn't own any regalia. He really wasn't, he shared that he wasn't prepared. And when the totem pole was raised, that was the first time he had ever danced. And he had shared that he copied what he'd seen before and had worn a headdress made by a white carver at the time. So David hadn't created his own regalia. He hadn't been gifted any regalia at the time. He was just learning along the way. After that first potlatch in 1982, David ultimately motivated our people. It was said he did ignite a fire. He continued involving our community members in ceremonial potlatch. The next potlatch David held was in 1994, and it was a 4-day event where each clan was given a day to feast, conduct business, dance, and gift witnesses. It was one of the largest events that had ever taken place in Metlakatla. Since then, David has had several potlatches, Metlakatla, Seattle, and elsewhere. And a fun fact, he's carved 83 totem poles and is currently working on 6 more. So I think by the time, he retires or finishes what he's doing, if he ever does, I'm pretty sure he'll probably make it past 100. But that's what I've got. Thank you.
Inupiaq Susan Ariga. Next, we'll have Charlie.
Hello, Ubunga Charlie Tuai, Utkerving Milguruma. And I think I'm going to be sharing my PowerPoint presentation.
Are you talking about your Inupiaq?
My Inupiaq, yeah. Would you
Okay.
mind sharing that on your end, Jericho? Please?
Yes, I'll open it up.
All right, this is my Inupiaq presentation, and the one I chose was The Berry Pickers. And it was written and told by Homer Mekiana and Elijah Kokinya, and presented by me. Next slide, please. All right. In the old times, it is said, the caribou had teeth, canine teeth, like wolves. Roar. Next slide. Then, one time, there were many women out picking berries. Ooh, so peaceful. Or, I love picking berries, so peaceful. Or so she thought. Next slide. Then, when the caribou saw the people, they attacked them. I'll eat you all. Never. Run. I just wanted to pick berries. Next slide. While the people were under attack, a caribou mauled a woman's child beside her. I will eat your baby. Please, no. Next slide. And the caribou mauled him, the baby that is, then attacked the woman. Yum, yum. Yo, that's my baby. I'll eat your mom too. Next slide. At that, the woman made it bite into some berries she had picked. These berries were extremely sour and could make your teeth fall out. Mwahaha, these are the most sour berries. Nom nom. Next slide. And so the caribou's teeth fell out. Oh no, my teeth are falling out. We're safe, y'all. Next slide. Now, the roof of the caribou's mouth has spots the color of berries, and the lower are left so that it can eat. Now I can't eat people anymore. Next slide. Oh, I guess I'll just eat plants. Woohoo, they can't eat us. The end.
Inupiaq Charlie. Next, we will have Lorena.
Hello. Uvanga ayokok utkavir mi gurunga ilisak tunga ilisagavir mi. And I'll be sharing a short story that I had interviewed my mom, Rachel Forbes, which is about my great grandfather from Shishmaf. And I could share my screen. Let's see. Share. And can you see it?
Yes.
Oh, turn down. Okay. Just a moment. Okay. So it's called Shaman to Salvation. And it's told by Rachel Forbes. Oh, here's my mom. So our great grandfather Jones was a shaman in the Shishmaf area. He did many great and mystical things as a shaman. When the missionaries came to the town and shared the gospel, he thought long and hard about what they had told the people. He came to a realization that what he was doing was not right. So he began to see the reality and evilness of his shamanistic ways. He accepted the faith and decided to give up one of his 2 wives. He then lost his shamanistic powers, which he has said immediately after deciding to no longer practice shamanism. His wife, which was called number 1, was excellent at sewing, cooking, and able to handle anything that came her way. He called her the brain. And wife number 2 was beautiful and, well, just that. When Jones told his wife number 2 that he no longer could stay married to her, she became angry. He knew that she was going to try and shoot him, so he removed the bullets from the gun without her knowing. And before walking in the door the next day, he rubbed some seal blood on himself. Just as he thought, she shot at him as soon as he walked into the house. He fell to the ground and laid still for a while. As he began to stand up, she had thought he got his shamanistic powers back and brought himself back to life. He had to tell her that it was just seal blood and there were no bullets. He laughed so hard and she left. Our Aunt Doris said that when she was a young girl, a couple of shamans had come to visit their home, and her dad told her not to look up and make sure to go right to sleep. She was so curious that she peeked over her blanket, and the 2 men were wearing masks. One of them took off his mask and revealed his true self. His face was dark and scary, and he had a smile with hundreds of sharp teeth. She quickly closed her eyes and hoped they did not notice. She realized the men who looked normal on the outside appearance were actually shamans or evil spirits in disguise.
Inupiaq Ayalpuk Ariga. So next we have Yael, who is not here today, but I have her video.
Yael Israel, Wasona Mi'uruma, Sakina Elisalubu.
So that was her introduction. And then I have her video along with Lorena's, and they also did on the berry pickers.
The old times said the caribou had two canines like wolves. And one time we were then looking out picking berries, and when the caribou saw them, they attacked them. While the people were under attack, the caribou mauled the woman's child beside her, and the caribou that had mauled him attacked the woman. At that time, the woman made it to bite into berries she had picked, and so it caused it to lose its teeth. She made them fall out. So the roof of the caribou's mouth has spots, the colors of berries, and the lower teeth are left so that it can eat. So it was that she made it eat sour cranberries so that its teeth would fall out.
Today I'm presenting The Berry Pickers, story by Elijah Kakimia from the Inupiaq book, read and animated by myself, Yael Israel. In the old times, it is said, the caribou had teeth, canine teeth, like wolves. Then one time there were many women out picking berries. And when the caribou saw the people, they attacked them. While the people were under attack, a caribou mauled a woman's child beside her. And the caribou that had mauled him then attacked the woman. At that, she made it bite into some berries she had picked, and so caused it to lose its teeth. She made them fall out. So the roof of the caribou's mouth has spots the color of berries, and the lower teeth are left so that it can eat.
Ariga, I know Yael's not on, but thank you, Yael and Lorena. So you can see some of them have chosen like the same story, but each of them have a different take to it. So that was pretty cool to see. Now we'll have Kahlo. Kahlo. Okay, we'll go to Shane.
I'm here. Sorry.
Okay, go right ahead, Kahlo.
Do you want me to pull it up?
I can pull it up, but you can introduce yourself. Oh, I guess you did introduce yourself, but Inupiaq.
I Uvanga Galolaine, Maui me Gurunga, Tanik Siniga Galolaine, Inupiaq Siniga Sisolik, and Ilisavik Tuna Ilisavik.
Ready when you're ready.
So I did an interview on my grandma. Her name is Paya Hilotusa. And next slide, please. So this is my grandma, just little cute pictures of her. On the right side, she loves to go to church, she's very God-fearing, and she has lots of hats. She has different hats for different days for church on Sunday, or for different times at church on Sunday. And she loves all her grandchildren. Next slide. So I did an interview on my grandma because background behind my grandma, she was born and raised in Dao Vava'u Tonga, which is a village in Tonga, an island in the Pacific. And she is one of 12 siblings. And she learned from her mom, Funaki Manolatu, to remember the family stories and how important it is to know where you're from and where your family members come from. And so my grandma, she's known as a historian on both sides of our family because of the knowledge she knows. And because of her, I was able to learn how important it is to keep records, journal entries, videos, and pictures so I can share with my family to have this knowledge to share. And one of my favorite family stories to tell about her is her life in Tonga and the sacrifices that she's made to come to America. And because of her, our family tree is filled up to 5 generations back. She knows a lot about her great grandparents and their siblings and all their kids, and specifically from what villages they come from. And you could tell my grandma, like you could go to my grandma with any name. She's like, oh, I know she's from Vava'u, or she could tell you what village you're from, which is similar to being here in Barrow and seeing all the elders knowing like their family tree. And so it's just super cool to see the similarities between our cultures and how important it is to know our family tree and know where we come from and who our family is. Thank you.
Inupiaq. Now we'll have Shane.
Awesome. I'm going to read a story a little bit that I wrote about a camping trip, but since I already introduced myself in English, Umanga Shane, Houston, Marungana. And so the story I'm reading, thinking about stories of my experience in the outdoors has kind of always brought me a sense of joy. When I thought about Inupiaq values and respect for nature came to mind, I started to think about many of the childhood summers I used to work for a camp in the rural eastern mountains of West Virginia where I grew up. Unfortunately, that camp has been sold, but the memories abound. And it's through that experience that I really developed a love of camping. And through the scouting world, I discovered a love of winter camping. It's kind of funny that I'm actually at a national scouting base in Florida, telling a story about a national scouting base in Minnesota, kind of really polar opposites. But since 2012, I've had the ability to engage with a cold weather program that we call Inupiaq at the BSA's base in northern Minnesota. It's spelled differently, so it's from a different dialect, but so spelled with an O instead of a U. But it's close to the Canadian border, and depending on the year, it can have some really wildly different temperatures. As a participant staying in a Quincy, the daytime temperature my year approached 40 Fahrenheit above zero, resulting in slushy ice and sweaty people, and me having to wear covers over my mucklucks to keep them dry. It was a less than ideal winter camp. But that's not the year that I chose to write about or remember. My most memorable night of camping was the first year I staffed the program back in 2014. It was one of those polar vortex years, so we expected it to get cold. Little did we know that the ambient temperature would drop to 35 below zero, and with the winds, we got to negative 67. Had it not been for somewhere in Siberia, we would have been the coldest region on the globe that night. So of course we were hunkered down. Our participants were in various constructions, other Quincy's, shelters they'd made out of tarps and snow trenches. And the other male staff and I were sharing something we called a Russian tent. It's kind of a big circus tent, and we call it a Russian tent because the language for the instructions are written in some kind of Cyrillic alphabet We don't really know where they came from. They've had them since the 80s and we keep taking care of them. But it was a big nylon tent that really blocked no wind, or blocked the wind, but no insulation rather. So I figured that my sleeping bag would be fine until the zipper broke on the outer one. So I slept in this awkwardly rolled up position, but I slept surprisingly well. That is until I needed to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, as one always seems to have to. So after convincing myself to get out of bed and throwing back on my mucklucks without bothering to put the liners in, I drug myself outside and I was greeted with the most stunning night sky I've ever seen. It was an incredibly clear night, and I'm not sure I've ever seen that many stars. That region often sees the northern lights, but I've unfortunately not been there when the northern lights have been out or not been awake for them. But I figure that even when I do, it'll be hard to top this experience. Even though I was still living in Appalachia at the time and could see the stars when we rarely camped, that Minnesota night was so exceptionally clear. I could even see the milkiness of the Milky Way. Everywhere I looked was an astounding view. After realizing that if I stayed outside of my sleeping system any longer, I could quite possibly freeze, I dragged myself back in and went to bed. I've camped many nights in Minnesota since then, had some amazing experiences and even saw a 22-degree halo around the moon. But that night sticks out in my mind. It was a night where I'll never forget the sky, and being able to say that we survived or really thrived in that kind of crazy cold weather was an amazing experience out on the frozen lakes. Thanks.
Inupiaq Shane for sharing your story. Next is Calvin on. Do we have Calvin? Okay, all right. So is there anybody else that I have missed that is here? All right, so going back to the plants class, we have Thomas Field who will present, and I am able to open up your presentation, Thomas. So give me 1 second. And Inupiaq, everybody, for your patience as we are going over 1 o'clock. All right, Thomas.
I'm sorry. I was closing the blinds. You guys hear me good?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, my presentation was on cranberries and it was kind of rushed since I did it today. For the ingredients, we're gonna be using cranberry, sugar, orange juice, and orange zest, water, cinnamon. Next slide. Okay, when you make cranberry jam, you could either do it right after you pick it, fresh, frozen, with dog cranberries, make the jam. Cranberries are very healthy. They have a lot of vitamin C and E, a great source of fiber, and so forth. Cranberry jam can be very tart, so using sugar, you can get rid of most of it, if not all of tartness. And adding orange juice adds a lot of vitamins and helps with teeth and gum health. While adding cinnamon can help with adding flavor and spice. Next slide. Steps to make cranberry jam. First step is to clean the pot, or put water in the pot, bring it to a boil, and while stirring occasionally to dissolve sugar, add jam, or add the cranberries, sugar. Steps to reduce. Second step is to reduce heat to low simmer while continue stirring and keep cooking until cranberries are tender and pop open. This will take about 8 to 10 minutes as the cranberries cook. It naturally thickens to a more jam-like consistency. Next slide. cranberry jam. You can use your cranberry jam for a number of things like pancakes, biscuits, scones, waffles, French toast, and oatmeal. Probably more. While you can, it has many. While it has many uses, you can also give it as a gift to a friend or a family that you want to try some. Next slide. Storing your cranberry. After you finish making your cranberries, you usually store them in a jar. You clean the jar, sterilize it, boil in the water, and make sure the lid and top of the jar is dry as you cover it so it can seal properly. And after you're done sealing it, you could store it in the freezer to make it last longer, or just the fridge for later day. I think that was all of my presentation.
Inupiaq Thomas Agga. Is there anybody else that we may have missed? All right, well, I just want to say Inupiaq to all of our students and for presenting. I know sometimes it could be, you know, a scary feeling presenting in front of other people, but you all did a really great job and I'm really proud of you all. And I hope you enjoyed everybody else's presentations. And for our guest speakers, or not guest speakers, our guests who joined Inupiaq for supporting our students with your presence. So that concludes our second Inupiaq Fine Art Series event on creative writing, traditional plants, and also Inuit storytelling. So we are finished. If anybody has any questions, feel free to stay on. But if you have to leave, we'll see you next time on Nagalu.
Anagalu.
Anagalu.
Inupiaq, everyone.
Anagalu.
Anagalu.
Bye.